We ask all nations to isolate Iran's regime as long as its aggression continues. And we ask all nations to support Iran's people as they struggle to reclaim their religious and righteous destiny.
And it seemed that Iran's president had the last word, at least for today. He hit back at the U.S., comparing America to Nazi Germany.
It is unfortunate that we are witnessing rulers in the world who think they can secure their interests better, or at least in the short term ride public sentiments and gain popular support through the fomenting of extremist nationalism and racism, and through xenophobic tendencies resembling a Nazi disposition, as well as through the trampling of global rules and undermining international institutions, even through preposterous and abnormal acts.
All right, for more on the economic and diplomatic situation in Iran, we're joined by Dr. Forough. He is the board chairman and executive director of the New Iran. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, I want to get your reaction there to President Rouhani's comments comparing U.S. treatment of Iran to the Nazis.
No one should take that seriously. First of all, if we have to think about brutalities, the Islamic Republic is the government who has actually killed over 50,000 of its opponents early during the revolution. And also, if Mr. Rouhani is talking about the nuclear deal, they knew ahead of time when it was signed by President Obama that it was only an executive order, that it could have actually been reversed by the next president because it was not a treaty and was not by signed or approved by the U.S. Senate. So no matter how you look at it, it's just talk. And the last thing I would like to say is that there is a term called taqiyya, which in Shia Islam means that the Muslims like Rouhani are allowed to lie and cheat as long as they think it's for good for Islam. So anything they sign, any contract they sign, always think of taqiyya. And taqiyya, look it up in dictionary, that means in Shia Islam you can lie and cheat and sign any contract, and as long as you think that it's good for Islam, you can basically sign and do that.
So you're saying that creates even less credibility to any agreement with the Iranians?
Absolutely. Never trust the agreements they sign.
Well, the situation on the ground there has been seeing more of the resistance movement come forward as these economic sanctions start to strangle the economy. You have sources on the ground. You say that never before has the regime been so close to collapse.
Absolutely. We seriously believe that the Islamic Republic would actually implode because of economic. Something to remember is that it is mostly because of the way that Islamic Republic has governed Iran during the last 40 years that the economic situation is the way it is. Really, the impacts of the Mr. Trump pulling out of the nuclear deal has not even really been sensed inside Iran. This thing, the economic collapse, started many years ago, at least 2 or 3 years ago. Now, since May, when the first phase of the sanctions started, we have seen the value of rial actually really going down because people can sense what's coming up. And after November, it will get worse. And we believe it's the economic situation of the Iranian people that will cause them to rise against the regime.
Iman, the president was calling on other nations to support him with these sanctions on Iran. And here's the part that I don't get. The president is saying that the nuclear deal, not only does it do nothing to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapons further down the line, positioning Iran in a better place to get them, but that it also perpetuates, as you say, the tyranny of the regime. Now, this is something that European countries say that they're against human rights abuses, that they're against what the regime stands for. And yet today, on this day when the president is calling for cooperation, we've got the Europeans, China and Russia coming up with this special purpose vehicle, a joint payment mechanism, allowing companies to bypass U.S. sanctions. What do you make of that?
It's very sad. First of all, the Iranian people will not forget what the Europeans are doing against them. In other words, the European countries, basically, we believe, and the Iranian people believe, that they're only looking after themselves and their pockets. Number two is that it's really the European companies that are more important. Even Total, the energy company in France, has pulled out from Iran. Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, Hyundai, General Electric, Boeing and everybody, they have pulled out. Why? Because those companies actually need to report to their shareholders, not to the European Union. So they know they cannot do business.
But perhaps this new special purpose vehicle will help those companies bypass that. Do you think it'll succeed?
No, it will not. Mr. Bolton spoke today in a Iran summit at the Westin Hotel in New York, and he specifically talked about that and said when they asked the spokesperson for EU, what are the details of this announcement? He said they don't know no details. They don't know what date it's going to start. They don't know how much money is going to be in there. So it's mostly probably some rhetoric that they're actually doing that. I believe that all European companies, they will look at the $400 billion of Iran's economy and $21 trillion of U.S. economy, and they have to make a choice and pick one. I think the answer is very clear.
How is it that there is just such a massive disconnect between the U.S. and its European allies? They would argue that a flawed deal is better than no deal, and that the sanctions ultimately just hurt the people on the ground in Iran. What do you say to that?
Well, there's no doubt that the sanctions does hurt the people of Iran. However, we have to believe what is better, a lot of bloodshed or a war with the Islamic Republic, or the people of Iran, which tell us day in, day out that they would prefer to actually suffer economically and get rid of the regime economically rather than a lot of bloodshed. Now, one could argue that Mr. Kerry has said the same thing and done the same thing. Maybe it's all the years of work that they did. They don't want to lose that. But bottom line, don't forget about the EU3 many years ago, about 6, 7, 10 years ago, when the three Germany, UK, and France went through the same thing and basically gave away a lot of things to Islamic Republic, and we are where we are today with the nuclear work and all the missiles and everything else that they're doing terrorism-wise in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen.
Fascinating conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Iman Forotan. Clear Cut will be back after the break. Stick around.